Welcome to the show, everybody. Micah with CoronavirusDiaries. Today, I'm fortunate enough to reconnect with Frank Cupery, a housing inspector, creative, and entrepreneur here in the Twin Cities. Frank, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me back for another edition of the Coronavirus Diaries.
Yes, sir. So last time we had some fun discussions, creativity, talked a little bit about the UFO stuff because that new footage that was released from the Navy. But today, before we started the show, like we always do, we're catching up, and we started discussing a little bit about some stuff you got going on. So I'll just ask you what's new, and we'll roll with it. What's new?
Well, my exciting thing right now is besides work and family, and I've been spending a lot of time working on a project in my basement. That project is a multimedia studio.
Yeah, buddy.
And it's going to be a space to do creative things. If we go back years back, you and I actually shared a creative space at one point, multiple times.
A couple different, yeah.
Yep. So this is, I stopped paying other people for using their space, and I had space in my own home, and I get to do that there. So that's going to be really cool, being able to, on a Saturday or Sunday or any day, just rolling out of bed, going down there and doing something creative, and then being able to pick it back up if I need to later, and not have to worry about it.
Having the space to actually work from. So that I'm pumped. I want to dig into this a little bit because for as long as we've known each other, we've for the most part had some sort of a shared communal space, whether it was part of a bigger studio or one of our own. Long live the Paragon.
The Paragon studio.
But whatever
the 9-month lease.
The 9-month lease and it was a fun project, but the adversity that we had to overcome in certain scenario situations, even with a podcast that we had done back a while back for another platform. We talked even, I think, on one of these sessions where we had to hang like bed, like blankets and like
down in the same basement.
Yeah. And so I wanted to touch base on that, this idea of like, now you're at this new point where you're about to have this really great space that's really well put together, designed, tailor made for Frank Factor, your podcast that you do, as well as it sounds like you'll be able to do band practices and other creative aspects in there. But as far as creativity goes and not having those resources, what are your thoughts on that? Like if somebody wants to do something, they have really like the space may not be there, or it may not be desirable, or the equipment that they have may not be what's really needed. I've found it can kind of go one of two ways. People use it as an excuse why they can't do something, or people will decide to figure out what they can do with what they have. How's your take? What's your take on that, or your approach?
Roll up your sleeves and get it done. Whatever you got, make the best of the situation. You might not have the best gear. I remember back, I had just gotten done with college and I had nothing. Guitar Center gave me a line of credit. So I started buying music equipment there. I had a couple guitars and amps before. I've had recorders in high school. Always been into music, had PA systems, bought and sold and next gear, and had some nice stuff at certain points that I saved up for. But I found over my course of development, I'll think I need something, and then all of a sudden I'm selling it 6 months later, And so it's like,
why is that?
Well, because you thought you were into this, or you're riding the wave, man, the next wave, and then you get off it and you go on the basically you get caught up in thinking that you need something to be able to do something. So it's a roadblock, It's you and getting something done. And those come up all the time in many different ways, but that's when you have complete control over.
In both business and creativity, right?
Yeah. In anything in life, a challenge. But this one you have the total control over. So it's way different, all of a sudden, but you might unconsciously not realize it. Well, when you can take that power back by consciously realizing it, then you start to do creative thing, or you set a goal if you need equipment and you don't, and then you make sure you need it, and you review it. Like we were talking the other day, a new soundboard. I'm able to do some real things with it now that I'm able to do with other equipment. However, we did some amazing productions and cool things without that equipment. You know,
Right.
for example, I have this Fresh Baked Cookies media. It started as a live stream for these DJ partners and friends that I had. We did a live broadcast and got thousands of viewers sometimes. And we just used what we had, you know, and I had a good sound interface, but there was lots of time spent trying to get everything figured out and working right, and systems integrated and working with each other and communicating with the computer and this and that. But, you know, we made it work with far less. Now I have this new equipment and it's plug and play. It's like, you know, it takes out all the BS, but we still did some awesome things between them, you know? And so back to what I'm getting at is, don't get hung up on feeling like you need something when you may not really need it. You know, focus on being creative and set your goal to get the equipment or whatever you need, but do the research and really take some time to figure out if you actually need it. Because like I said, started the story off, I had bought and sold equipment so many times.
Sure. Yeah, it's always interesting to see. I think there's a certain amount of paralysis that can come with too many options, like too much. Like if there's so much opportunity, in a sense, it's almost like taking an artist that likes to paint. We'll just use painting as an example, right? And you put them in a room, and within that room there is one tube of paint and a paintbrush and a canvas, right? You limit all the options, and they're going to think about what's the coolest, best, like what are the things that they can do with what they have to create, you know, some sort of a painting that they're proud of. Whereas if you presented them with all the colors and all the different brushes and all the different tools and 50 different canvas sizes, you know, just for them, sometimes, maybe not always, but in my own experience, I've found that sometimes it's hard to get going because there's so many options and so many variables that you can play off of, that actually restricting, you know, the opportunities or options that you have will help you do better work with the little bit that you do have. So in a way, it's almost beneficial to really limit your resources and limit your time. Have you ever had a time where you have a bunch of time to do something and it becomes more of a barrier, like having too much time or too much equipment, where maybe the idea doesn't come as freely as you like, or the song that you're writing doesn't?
Well, if you think about it like this, your brain is like a computer, right? And computers processors can only handle so much information, right? So if you think of every item or possession or whatever you want to talk about, you can only focus on so many bits of information per minute or whatever.
Sure.
So, I mean, going to a minimalist lifestyle isn't actually the worst thing to do. It allows you to focus on the things that are important to you. You know, so like the gear lust thing, back to that.
It's real.
You fill your life up with all these things. Well, do you really need them? You know?
Yeah.
You and I had talked about the soundboard for a long time. Like I looked at it for months and months and months and months.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this a good idea? Watch reviews, and then finally I pulled the trigger on it, you know?
Yeah.
And this thing I don't think I'm going to sell. I think it's going to be, but you know, I'm always tempted. Oh, I need this next like I'm starting this Frank Factor thing, right? So it's live broadcast. Tonight I'm going to be talking about peacocking because we're in the spring, and, you know, like mating habits, you know, like strutting your stuff around to attract the opposite sex.
While adhering to social distancing, but
yes, well, of course. but I mean, we do these type of things even with a partner we've been with for a long time, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
The word was actually brought up to me by my wife, you know, peacocking. Oh, you're peacocking. Like, that's not even a thing. Well, sure enough, I found it on the internet, you know. She's making fun of me for, you know, getting.
Were you flexing or what?
I don't. Who knows? I mean, I'm sure I do it all the time. I'm a goofy guy. I like to get her attention and do goofy things and whatever, so it's funny, or you come out of the shower with a towel on and you walk downstairs. Hey, everybody look at me. I'm going to get my clean clothes from the dryer, and just being a dork,
How long you been married for?
Oh boy.
Uh-oh,
On
on
the
the
spot.
spot.
9 years almost now.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. So a long time. But yeah. So anyways, back to the show. I keep looking at all this gear. Oh man, I could do a better job if I had this camera or whatever. Right now I'm just shooting with a Microsoft web camera, the same one we're using for this meeting right now. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to keep creating and whatever. And when I need that piece of equipment, it'll come,
Yeah.
So I'm doing YouTube channel for it too. And I'm going to do some more, some like just videos and stuff, like educating videos. Cause I know a lot of construction stuff with my background and there's a lot of people who seem to be interested in that. So I'm going to be doing some education things on there.
Oh, big time.
As well. And I'm thinking, oh, I would love to have this camera and all that. But do I really need it? No, I don't. What I have works.
Yeah.
And when I need it, it will be there,
And the gear lust is a real thing. And we've had these conversations before where, for me with videography, it was, oh man, if I get this certain lens or if I get this certain camera body or the lighting or, whatever it is, the little widget, the thing that, is going to it's going to up your production. And I see it all the time when people, if people come to me and they talk to me and say, hey, what do I need? What I typically always like to, because if I don't know what level they're at or what their objective is, it's like, one, identify what you're trying to do. And if you don't know, then look at what you have and identify what you can do with what you have. And through that process, you're going to find out what you're lacking, and you'll be able to prioritize, what do you need to get to achieve that thing that you're setting out to do, whether it's making a film or commercials or vlogs or whatever it is. So, the gear lust, there's still stuff in my kit right now that I remember way back when I first started getting into video. It was like, you're getting the gimbals and the shoulder rigs and it's all the things, right? And at some point in time,
how often do you actually get to use those in one production?
There's certain things that have become paramount in my kit, right? But there's also a number of things that I have
you sold,
or it's in a big box of like, one day I might need it, or I did use that 6 months ago and I could use it again. But just thinking back to some big purchases online I made where I'd fill my basket with all these things and like, oh yeah. And then I get it. Case in point, I remember I had ordered this like big mat box for my camera, some big lighting things, like some extra adapters to have all the things like ready to go. And I went to just help a friend record this thing at the university. I just remember setting the kit up and it was like this crazy, it was way out of proportion for what was necessary. And it was one of those moments where I was looking at it and I'm like, I could have stripped, 75% of this gear off of here and used stuff that was half the price, and I would have still been able to do exactly what was necessary here. And so gear lust, man, that's I think it's almost an inhibitor of creativity to let yourself go there.
Yep. Because and then think about that. You're like, oh man, you're spending all this energy, thinking about, oh, I need this camera. Well, how? And then you start looking online, and well, maybe I can find it for cheaper, or maybe, and maybe you don't even have the money in your bank account to do anything with it yet,
Right.
All that time you could have been spending on doing something creative.
Yeah.
And using what you said, using what you have,
Yeah, I guess sometimes it just comes down to making the mistakes. Like sometimes you gotta like waste the money on something to realize, like just start getting this understanding of like, maybe I don't really need these things. Typically you can kind of liquidate the gear if you find your way into a bunch of stuff you didn't really need to kind of get close to breaking even.
But you still, you feel lucky. And if you turn it right away, but I mean, you unbox a $500 item or something, you're try to resell it, you're $100 off minimum, even if it's a mint condition.
Yeah, I'm sitting on a big gimbal right now. It's a no joke. It's Movi M5, it's carbon fiber, like can carry heavy cameras. It's a beast. But I've found that I don't really need that rig for a lot of what I do. And it's basically just like $1,000. It was way more, but now looking online, used can get rid of it for around $800 or so with the case and batteries and all these things. And I'm just seeing it as like, man, what else could I use that cash for? Like redirect to bring it into like maybe a different lens that I would actually use regularly for most shoots. But so what types of projects you coming up? That you got the Frank Factor that's happening. You're talking about doing some training stuff. You got to finish off your studio.
It's entertainment, education, and like live, connecting with people.
Are you going to be
the Frank Factor deal is? But
as far as the other project though with the training, is that part of the Frank Factor?
Yeah, because it's going to be a part of my YouTube channel. So
gotcha.
So I want to inform people too. Like
nice.
If there's a skill that I can share with others and help other people learn, it's a win-win-win.
Very cool. Yeah, well, you'll have to keep me posted on how that goes. Did you have?
What's
Go ahead. I was going to ask. I know we're hitting that point in time. I don't know if I know you're a busy guy. If you had other stuff that you want to talk about, I'm happy to keep going. But
let's see here. What else can we talk about?
So what about this in business? So segue to business from like the creative side of things. In business, resources. Do you think it can be applied, or this kind of theory that we've got with creativity and resources could be applied to business and resources as well? Is that
absolutely?
Yeah. So with your experience, how do you navigate that? This idea of needing certain things, and in some cases, obviously, you do need to have. If you're going to be doing landscaping, there's probably a good chance you're going to need a shovel, right?
You need tools, right?
But to what extent? You might not need the best backhoe or front end loader or whatever bulldozer would make things easier, maybe. But with projects and businesses that you've worked in or worked on developing, was there ever a point in time where you realized, like, whether it was maybe like and it's just off the top, like some random like trailer or some random tools that you're like, I have to have this in order to do that thing, that you're able to circumvent that?
I mean, there's certain tools, like you're saying, this gimbal you have, you're not sure that it's a tool that's necessary. It's kind of specialized.
I have a smaller one that I use a lot more that was actually considerably cheaper. That one was like a much higher scale type of setup, cost more money, but ended up using it quite a bit less because of how much overkill it was for a lot of the projects I worked on.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like in the construction industry, I have about two tools or two versions of every tool, because I had crews working for me. Yeah. Do I need all that anymore? No, I started going through all that stuff, and I've kind of slimmed down, and this summer I want to go through it around again and see, am I actually using this?
Sure.
You could do the same with your clothes in your closet.
I do.
Have you worn it? Yeah. Have you worn it in a year? Nope. Well, did you really need it? No.
I love moving. That's one of my favorite things about moving is whenever I move, I'll go through all my closets, and whether it's shoes, clothes, or sporting equipment or adventure gear or whatever, I just kind of like pool things together and say, all right, what's going to be dead weight that I'm just moving around, not doing anything with? And so far, for the most part, every time that I fill up a couple of bags and drop them off at, Goodwill, Thread Shed, Salvation Army, whatever, in a month, I can't really even remember half the stuff that went out.
And you feel better after doing that.
For sure, man. It's nice not having loads of extra stuff carrying around.
Yeah.
Well, hey, man, I think we definitely hit the nail on the head. The creativity and the resources is great.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, any viewers, listeners that have their own stories, if they wanted to share at a time when maybe they had fewer resources, but were able to, develop something or create something beyond what they thought was even possible at the time.
Blair Witch Project. Look at that. That was
And
a
it
huge movie.
set a precedence for those types of, handheld first person type of video
Yep.
movies that came out after that. Yeah, because that was a totally new thing, new idea at
Yeah,
the time.
and they've used those like a lot of the angles and like they got so creative with what they had,
Yeah.
So moral of today's story is use what you have and just get to being creative,
Yeah.
you know.
Quick
I got this
question.
basement, I'm turning into a studio and I'm going to get even more creative. I love it.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I think I know the answer to it though. But so this whole COVID-19 pandemic that's we're in the middle of right now, or
Yep.
how has it either forced you to kind of look at how you're creating and what you're creating, or has it changed? Like, how has it changed? If it has changed, how has it changed your perspective or
It's
approach to things?
yeah, I mean, I didn't think I'd be doing this if you had asked me 3 months ago if I'd be doing this live broadcast call-in talk show thing, I would have said probably not, So the catastrophe inspired new creativity, which is kind of cool.
Like, why?
It's just every ending's a new beginning too, it's the cycle of life, It's just
A
if
door
you
opens,
let
another one, or a door
yeah,
closes, another one opens.
yeah, exactly. So um it's this pandemic has definitely made me appreciate things a lot more and be
Good.
more thankful, but it's also like really inspired some great new creativity. I don't think I would have been working on my creative studio if I wouldn't be asked to stay home all day,
Fair enough.
all night. So it's you can take a catastrophe, you can turn it into a flower garden. You can turn shit into a flower garden, or you can let it turn into a cesspool. You choose.
Yeah. Real talk. Frank, thank you for coming on the show. Excited to hear or hear the Frank Factor tonight.
Yeah, buddy.
For any of the viewers, listeners that are interested, checking it out down below. Or did you do have the site now? And there's
Yeah,
a way
there's a
to
site. It's the frankfactor dot square dot site. The frankfactor dot square dot site.
there it is.
And it's on Facebook at the Frank Factor, and on Instagram at the Frank Factor Show.
You run them all at the same time? Are they all live, or do you
No,
put them
no,
up after?
Facebook Live, and then I put it up to YouTube afterwards. So
Gotcha. Right on.
yeah,
Cool. Well, peacocking tonight.
yeah, I'll be peacocking on my live stream.
Right on, brother. Well, it's been a pleasure, Frank. Thanks for jumping on the show again. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, buddy. All the viewers and listeners, again, information's down below, and stick around. We got more of this coming your way.
Later.